What's up, everyone? Thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys are having a good day. This is Josh from Vaulters Union, and I am back with another game versus game video. Unlike the past videos where we compared one game against another, this time we're going to go ahead and step up and compare a series against another series. So this time we're going to take a look at the Far Cry series against the Crysis series. First of all, there are three main base games for each series, and then each series also has a series of other, random games and spin-offs. So first things first, we're going to go over a little bit of background information. So the first Far Cry game was developed by Crytek and then published by Ubisoft. After that, Far Cry 2 and 3 and all the other expansions were developed and published by Ubisoft. Crytek has developed every single Crysis game to date, and they've all been published by EA. So what we're going to do in this video, guys, like we have done in the past game versus game videos, is that we are going to compare the different categories and talk about which ones I like better and why. And then at the end, I'm going to choose which series I think is better, and also I'm going to tell you why. It should be quickly noted that the footage you're about to see is not necessarily relevant to what's being discussed. It's mainly just giving you something in the background to watch as I speak. And also I should let you know that the gameplay you're going to see is from Far Cry 3, which is the newest game in the series, and Crysis 1. So without further ado, let's get started. The graphics and environment for me is something that I find really hard to compare one to the other because they're both very good looking games. They both look amazing and very high detailed and all about the environment. If I had to choose one over the other, I would choose the Crysis series for sure. Far Cry 3 isn't necessarily known for the environment, although the environment is gorgeous. I think Crysis is mostly known for the insane graphics and the environment. So for this situation, I'm going to give the nod to Crysis. But again, that's not a knock on the Far Cry series because the Far Cry series, especially Far Cry 3, has some of the best environments you'll ever see in a game. But with it being some of the best, there's always something better, and in this case, Crysis is definitely better. Both games are first-person shooters. They are both, in a way, open world. Far Cry 3 has always been an open world sandbox type game, so you can always walk around, do whatever you want, go anywhere you want, whenever you want, and there's always a huge variety of weapons and vehicles you can access. Crysis 1 was played out in this way. It is a big open world, however, there's not much you can do other than complete the main missions, unlike Far Cry series where there's lots of different activities you can do throughout the world as well. Crysis 2 and 3 are much more linear than any of the other games in the series. However, the one thing that they have in common with all the games in the series, including the Far Cry series and Crysis 1, is that the main point is that when you have an objective, the open world allows you to complete it in any way you want. So you can still be stealthy, you can jump right in there, run in, guns blazing, and try and do it that way. So there's lots of different ways to go about doing things. So that's the similarity between all the games. However, Crysis 2 and 3 are not open world at all. Crysis 1 is, and all the Far Cry games are. I'm going to go ahead and give this nod to the Far Cry series. In my opinion, the Far Cry series really pulled off the open world style better than Crysis because they did give you access to lots of different things, lots of different activities you can do in the open world, not only the main mission. So there's lots of different things you can do, so if you don't want to play the main mission, there's still a lot to do. In my opinion, Crysis 1 was only an open world game because they wanted to set the standard for open world gameplay and graphics and environment, and that's probably the only reason because there's literally nothing else you can do besides do that and other random shit. You can go around destroying stuff and whatever else, but you can do that in the Far Cry series. Crysis 2 and 3 did it better because they didn't do the open world. They didn't really need to. They realized that, so they didn't do it. But for me, I prefer the style of Far Cry where you have the open world and you have access to do whatever you want and lots of different things to do except for the main missions. Whereas the other games, the other Crysis games, are basically you do the main missions and you go home. As previously stated, both of these games are first-person shooters and they both do feature a wide range of weapons. The main difference between these two games is that in Far Cry series, the weapons are named and based off of real-life weapons, and in Crysis they have made-up weapons and they also have made-up names as well. But you can't really hold that against Crysis because Crysis takes place much further in the future than Far Cry. I think Far Cry, I forget, is much more modern, but Crysis takes place much further in the future, so obviously there's going to be futuristic weapons that aren't around right now, so you can't hold that against it. The main thing that Crysis series has over the Far Cry series is the nano suit. The nano suit is essentially a superpower suit. It's a suit activated by the player, it uses energy, and it is required to recharge, but it basically gives the player one of 4 different superpowers that they can choose from to basically suit their style of play. So as I said, there are 4 different modes you can select when you activate the nano suit. The first one is armor, and this deflects damage and recharges the suit's energy much faster. Selecting strength allows stronger hand-to-hand combat, the ability to throw objects and enemies with deadly force and much farther. Also allows higher jumps, steadier aiming, and reduced recoil. Selecting speed increases running and swimming speed as well as other forms of motion such as reloading weapons. And the final one is cloak. This renders you basically completely invisible and suppresses movement noise. So basically allows you to sneak around enemies. This one is really hard for me to choose which one I like better because Crysis has the immediate advantage because they have the nanosuit, which is a really cool addition to a game. But because other than that the combat is basically similar, I'm going to give the nod to Crysis because of the fact they have the nanosuit, which adds a whole unique style of combat to the game. I kind of enjoy the combat more in Far Cry, but in Crysis you kind of have to give them the advantage because of the nanosuit, and the gunplay is pretty much the same, just like I said, more futuristic weapons, that's all. So it's pretty much all about preference. I'm not going to sit here and go into detail and talk about the 6 stories between the 2 series. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about my favorite story from all 6 games in the series, and that is from Far Cry 3. So basically Far Cry 3 puts you in the shoes of the protagonist Jason Brody. He's basically on vacation with friends in Bangkok. They do some skydiving and accidentally land on a pirate-infested island and are taken prisoner. They're taken hostage by a pirate lord named Voss. He plans to basically extort ransom money from the captives' families and parents and then sell them into slavery. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what happens next because I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't played it. But you manage to escape the prison, and then you are rescued by a man named Dennis, who is part of the Rakyat, and he recognizes your potential as a warrior and gives you the tattoos of a Rakyat warrior. So upon becoming one of the Rakyat warriors, Jason is basically given the knowledge and the skills to become a successful warrior, and the whole point of the game is for you to basically go around the island and attempt to rescue all your friends. And then at the end of the game you have a major decision to make. That's all I'm going to say about the story. I don't want to go into too much detail like I said, but this story is one of the best stories in a game that I've ever played, but that's just my opinion. So now comes the verdict, where I basically have to tell you guys which series of games that I would play over the other and why. So I'm not going to waste any time, let's just go ahead and announce this. If I had to choose, if some guy came up to me, put a gun up to my head and said you can only play one of these 2 series for the rest of your life and you cannot play the other one, which one would I choose? I would choose... I think this one is pretty much a no-brainer. I know the pictures of Far Cry 3, but in general, I would choose the Far Cry series as a whole over the Crysis series. And really, you had to kind of see it coming. The Crysis series mainly gives you incredible graphics and environment, probably the best, well, definitely the best that we've seen in a game in our lives up to this point. But it's not like it won by a large margin because Crysis is an amazing looking game, but Far Cry is probably not far behind. It's an incredibly gorgeous game as well. And although the graphics and environment in the Crysis series is definitely better than Far Cry 3, probably not a whole lot better, I feel like the gameplay in the Far Cry series is easily many times better than that of Crysis. So that's why I'm going to give the nod to Far Cry. Here you have this incredible looking, extremely high detailed open world in the Far Cry series, and not only is there an open world, but there's so much you can do with it. You know, there's animal hunting, there's bounty hunting, there's taking over radio towers and enemy hideouts, and there's also collecting of many different items, and there's so much more you can do in this game, and that's why I feel it's a better game, because they give you an open world and you're not just left with a story to complete. There's so much more you can do on the side, and that for me adds tens of hours of gameplay and provides a much more balanced and enjoyable experience, in my opinion. But as usual, I would love to know what you guys think, so feel free to leave comments below. And a lot of hours went into making this video with all the recording and rendering and editing and all that other stuff, so I'd appreciate it. Whether or not you agree with my verdict, to please leave me a like rating below, and then feel free to leave any comment you would like to show any support or lack of support. But of course, I'd like to hear your opinion. So that's all I'm going to have to say to you guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out.